Everything. Yeah. How's this plan is working? It's distracted. That's not like my plan. We need more anything else.
Hello, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
All right, great. So let's get it going. All right. Hello, everybody. Sorry, we're just sorting out the technical issues, but I think we should be getting going right now. Hello, everybody who has joined us on the Facebook Live. Welcome to the Simuka Comedy Indaba, where we'll be having a conversation about is comedy a viable tool for social change? I think that's a conversation that has been going on for a very, very long time within the comedy industry. How comedy is used, the impact of comedy, how it has the ability to be able to either impact or not. And today, that's one of the things that we are going to, that's the main thing we're going to be having a conversation about. And I'm really, really excited to welcome the brilliant panelists that we have. And I think it's going to be great, great conversation. So what I'm going to do is I always think that it's best for people to just jump in, introduce themselves, and let the people know who they are. So don't rush to go first to my panelists. Don't rush to go first. So go, introduce yourselves, let the people know who you are.
Since you told us not to rush to go first, so we were relaxed so that
First.
no one comes. Anyway, my name is Zenzele Ndebele, and I'm the director of the Center for Innovation and Technology site based in Bulawayo.
Thank you so much, Zenzele.
Hi everyone, my name is Roswitha Katsande. I'm the Director of Youth Empowerment and Transformation Trust, a youth networking organization that is working towards youth empowerment based in Harare. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. I hope that I'm audible. My name is Hando Kunji. I'm with Youth for Innovation Trust, for quite a number of years. But for this particular purpose, I'm the Gen Liaison Officer of Umahlekisa Comedy Club.
Hello. Okay, great. I think we're going to be waiting for one more person, but I think we're just going to jump in. Thank you guys for introducing yourself. Let's dive right in. Is comedy a viable tool for social change? Let me phrase this question in this particular way, and please just go on in and jump in and respond however you feel. Um, we know how comedy is something that has been ingrained within African culture for a very long time. It's something that was used to be able to uh, move along our culture, move along systems, move along a whole lot of um, conflict that exists. I always talk about one of the things about uh, culture is usually during funerals, comedy being used to be able to kind of let people breathe in a particular way when they're grieving. So before we dive right into comedy as a viable tool for social change, I just want to hear you guys your thoughts on comedy and how it's used within our society and how it's come up.
Well, on my part, I would say, yeah, I think to a larger extent, comedy can be used for social change. You give a historical perspective of how comedy can be used, but over the years, we have seen that people use comedies in societies that are a bit closed, mainly in dictatorship. Comedy played a very big role in the Eastern, in the Eastern countries in Europe. You talk about Serbia during the days of Milosevic. A lot of people used comedy, and even in other areas, you find that in many areas in Egypt. During the famous revolution in Egypt in 2011, people used a lot of comedy, and I guess in Zimbabwe as well. If you classify Zimbabwe as a dictatorship, you realize how we have seen the rise of comedy, because people will always say, to mock or to defy a dictator, send a clown.
That is true. That is very true. Anyone want to jump in? Zanzali, you want to jump in? I mean, you just did. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Let me jump in. Um, so I realized over the years, especially in the work that I've been doing with Umahlekisa, that comedy really does have a role to play, especially in reaching out to mold people's behaviors and to mold how people think and to set the pace, especially in the way in which people understand issues and in the way that people like arouse their emotions to fight for something. I've realized that comedy really does create change if crafted well, because we see a lot of jokes that we see online. We see a lot of comedy material that can be degrading, that can be creating divisions within us. But at the same time, the same way in which comedy can divide people according to their identities is the same way in which comedy can kind of perspective and outlook to things. So yeah, with the examples that have been used by Nzele, also looking at our current society, our current cultures, you find out that there are a lot of jokes that actually drive the way in which we think about things and way in which we can respond to things as a people. And this is why you find out that whenever anything happens in Zimbabwe, people begin to joke about it, even if it's really not a joking matter or a laughing matter. You'd see people joking about the president going to that platform supposedly drunk. And so, but that's something that starts the conversation that maybe this is how we are supposed to feel and think about certain things. Maybe it raises that awareness that this is something that maybe we really need to be thinking about, that it just puts it out there. And in comedy, being able to put things out there a little bit faster, you would realize that it really has a huge leeway in starting the conversation, that's creating change.
That's great. Roswitha, do you want to jump in?
All right. Thank you. So basically, I'm in agreement with the previous speakers that comedy is a viable tool for social change. I'm saying also because number one, we have seen comedy being used to open doors to complex issues. So we have had some complex issues that we face as a country, and we have noted that comedy is being used to, open doors for people to start engaging, to spark conversations, to spark debates around issues of social justice, and also having people paying closer attention to these serious and complex issues. And I've also realized that comedy is also used to persuade the audience emotionally, encouraging them to share, and also helping breaking down social barriers. And because social comedy is being used as a viable tool for social change, we've seen a lot of public engagement or serious social issues. So, for example, you can have a skit talking about maybe challenges related to education, lack of access to health. So you then attract attention, and then using that humor, it can also be used to cut through and really talk about the real issues that are affecting citizens, and also capturing the audience attention. And also, I've seen that comedy can also help the audience to remember around important issues that are affecting them. And from my experience, the work that we are doing, working with young people, we've also been using comedy, engaging, like, for example, comedians such as Doc Fikela, to also see how we can have an entry point around complex issues, so that we make these issues accessible and also amplify serious messages or important messages in terms of issues that are affecting citizens. And lastly, just to also say that when you also use comedy, you are also able to break down social barriers. There are certain topics or issues you may want to introduce or talk about. So comedy can then be able to be used to introduce people to these social issues, the new norms in a non-threatening way that can also enable this identification and connection with the audiences. So in that perspective, I'm convinced that comedy is a viable tool for social change. Thank you.
That is great. Thank you so much, Rosita. To keep the ball rolling, there's something that I think all of you say that was quite interesting that I think I want to keep digging at. Chando, you working with Umahlekisa, there's the idea of you guys being the comedy, being comedy producers. Sorry, there's a little sound in the back. That's a little, I don't know who that is coming from. Can you guys hear me properly? Great. Boss Kedha, welcome to the panel. Happy to have you.
Thank you for this. Now, experience.
That's okay. That is perfectly fine. We're happy to finally have you. So I'm just gonna keep going. So you guys, Tando, you talked about the idea of you and everybody, Roswitha Zenzele, you guys talked about the idea of comedy being a tool for social change and being able to break down social barriers. So I want to probe a little bit more and talk about the notion of the actual act of a comedian standing in front of people having a conversation. What is the process for you guys who have had conversations with people? Probably, I know in Zimbabwe one of the toughest things is to talk about politics, to talk about even the act of like service delivery, talk about just basic things that we need. So what is that act like when comedians have gone? I think Boskeda, you can even come in here, when you comedians have gone up, performed, and then you've got the audience that is standing right there. What is the immediate act that we're looking for in our audience as they're performing, as the comedians are performing? What exactly are we going for? I don't know if that's clear.
All right. I get you. It's actually really a lot of work. People could think that just going up on stage and saying jokes is something that's as simple as ABC, but it really does take a lot of work for a comedian to get there. So in 2019, we started implementing a project called Yuma for Social Change, which we are still rolling with today. So under the Yuma for Social Change project, we wanted to address issues that include gender-based violence, economic apathy, youth participation in general, among a lot of other things. So we realized that the moment you want to address issues of gender-based violence through comedy, you would need to really sit down and start learning. So comedians dedicated a lot of their time to noticing what is happening around their society and not just that, but also interacting with a lot of literature that exposes that comedian to a whole lot. What is this politically correct language that we should be using if we stand up there and start saying jokes about gender? It's a serious issue. It's not really that people think, now let's joke about this. It's not just comedy is per se. That's something that we also try to raise awareness around using comedy. It's the society is thinking about, and not just what the society is thinking about, but also what also is going on in terms of what the substances do to that particular person, the effects and everything else. So it's a lot of work in terms of trying to identify with the community, the society will be your audience at the end. And it also takes a lot of work in like I said, reviewing the literature and ensuring that then you put those punchlines that will actually grab people's attention. Because talking about issues is one thing, and talking about issues in a humorous way is also another. So a comedian needs to learn where to draw the line between offending and raising awareness to that particular issue, because there is really a very thin line in offensive and in comedy social change, and in comedy changing perceptions, stereotypes, etc. And a lot of times we would need to then know what these particular stereotypes are and what they're actually doing in our communities. And so for you to know what stereotypes are and what they are doing to communities, it's a lot of conversation that goes on around, conversation that is serious, unlike just coming up with jokes and cracking them up. And the other thing that the comedian needs to take note of in that process of just wanting to stand up in front of people in order to create change is that they should be in a position of driving their punchline towards the intended change. So it could be ridiculing something as serious as how they then put it across is how they can be able to drive change in the work that they are doing. So yeah, it's interesting, it's fun, it's fun, it's fun, different. It's a different way of doing things, but it really does take a lot of work for a comedian to stand up and go up there and make sure that they drive the change that they want to see. Which is why it is very important for comedians to actually working with a whole lot of the groups of people. It could be civil society organizations, it could be even government institutions that to share the different knowledge so that community can be.
That is great. Thank you so much, Tando. I just want to jump in so that I can bring Boss Kedha in. My next question has to do with one thing that comedy has been able to do over the years in various settings has been the idea of bringing about a sense of equity, allowing the people that are usually scary to us when we joke about them, we are then finally able to kind of look at them notness without any fear of some sense. So my question has to do with that in mind, how do we mitigate the way in which there is probably a risk to trivialize kind of tough issues using comedy? I mean, an example is I think somebody mentioned the idea of whenever something happens in Zimbabwe, you know that 5 minutes after it happens, the next thing it's jokes, it's memes, it's all sorts of different things. And there is that sometimes that tendency to say to translate everything into a joke. So my question has to do with how do we also not trivialize the really difficult and tough issues when we use comedy? How do we mitigate that? Boss Kedha, do you want to jump in and then Zenzeli can come in?
Well, I think for starters, you're using very big words like mitigate what is mitigating. Anyway, just to answer the question, as comedians, not only are we the mirror of what the society is, but at the same time, we are active with of what we expect society to do. And we are not only, we are in the mainstream, we are viral, we are on stage, we are using different alternatives, media, and a lot. But this is not only ending there, because this is actually in society, starting in society. We are at funerals, we are at weddings, we are at different social functions. There's different roles. There's Sawiras, there's Vasukuru, Abasukuru, and we are speaking these things. So in essence, there really isn't any way that we can say there's a boundary to what we have to say and how we have to say it. At the end of the day, it's about people understanding us that we're not really trying to provoke anyone, to challenge anyone, but we're just saying things how they should be said. Just using humor. Because when people laugh, at least if someone laughs, then you can expect uh, not having violence, or of course, by different setups. And this setup probably can end to violence and the law. But to us as thank you, that sound is gone. To us, it's about saying things how it should be said and when to say it. Like anytime anything happens, we will actually depict it in a way that should be comic, and people take it. Because we're not saying anything out of the air, out of the blue. We're just saying things that people actually know. That's why people laugh, but they relate to what we're saying. So we quite proud that we can do it and people actually laugh. I think I've forgotten your question along the way, but but to us, I think we just have a role. My sister earlier on, I think she was saying that at times we should feel that we should not offend. Actually, we should offend. We have to offend. But if you feel offended, then there's a problem. You should take the message, not kill the messenger. But to us, we feel like, wow, we are, who was that? Biblically, there was that guy, who was his name? The one who met up with the burning bush, Moses.
Moses.
We feel like Moses. We are Moses who saw the burning bush. Comedy is what we feel should attract people to us. But there's a voice behind the comedy, which is the message. If you feel offended, then look at yourself. What are you doing wrong? Where should you change? Well, that's exactly what we're looking for. It's just social change. We can do it at a funeral. Yes, and asawira, abazukulu, obani. We say it however you should say it. If we say you're the one who killed, we're not saying probably you're the one who stabbed or you what, but your actions, your interaction, your is the thing that actually caused this. So to us, we feel like our comedy, are we trivializing? We don't even care. We should say it however we say it. Well, to me, that's how I feel. And let's just say it.
That is true. I really like that. I think Zenzile, I'm gonna have you jump in. Same question about how do we find the balance between something joking about something that is serious and still maintaining the serious level, or joking about things that we should be a little bit tough on and their intent probably trivializing it. Just hear you jump in on that.
Yeah, I think the reason why people end up using comedy is that there are some things that cannot be, said as they are. So it has to do with the state of society sometimes. So where you find that where there is a lot of censorship, where there is a lot of oppression, where there is less freedom of speech, people tend to resort to comedy as a way of communicating because they would escape with a lot of things, and people laugh about the issues but reflect like other people have said. So comedy is a powerful tool of non-violent means. So it is a form of resistance, and it is a non-violent tool that you can use to resist oppression, to resist certain cultures. And you find that the easiest way to deal with issues under undemocratic environments, under dictatorship, under difficult cultures is to laugh. So of course, then you find that there's always they always and there shall be always controversy around comedy. People will ask, where do you draw the line? I think many of you followed the issue with Netflix and Netflix and the comedian, and people were saying apologize, and they're saying no, this is my freedom of speech. So it's a debate that can go on and on to say, where do you draw the line? And of course, people take into consideration the cultural issues. Some people get offended if you joke around the issues of religion. I think we have seen cartoonists being arrested, killed, newspapers being attacked because of the cartoons that they do, because of the comedy that people produce. So there is always going to be people who are not happy with why people use comedy, and they'll say probably you've gone too far. But the question is, what is too far? Because at the end of the day, it is a method that people use to express their feelings, and it's comedy is like a mirror. That's where society reflects on and see what is happening.
To me, Zenzele, my answer is still nothing that is too far. Let's say
So,
it.
That's actually where my question is. Where my next question is: Are we saying it's if it's in the service for social change, right? If comedy is then said, if we're doing comedy for the sake of social change, are we saying there is no line? Are we saying there is no line? Tando, do you wanna come in? Roswitha, do you wanna come in next?
I don't know if they heard you, but let me answer
Did
that.
you hear me?
There is no line.
Hello, Tando. Can you hear me?
Can
All right, let me know. Do you want to jump in now, Rosita? Do you want to go and then Tando comes in next? We lost Rosita. Tando. So my question has to do with if our comedy is in service, I mean, if we're using it for social change, if I'm going up as a stand-up comedian and I am performing and my ultimate goal is social change, and obviously we know the primary thing is to make people laugh, but social change, are we saying there is no line because we are on a quote-unquote holy mission for social change? Bosque, do you want to jump in whilst other people sort themselves out?
Well, to me, I feel like there is no line. Because what we is we stand things up and the down as the media represent everyone, negative and the positive, and we make people laugh in that. After the joke, we should leave people talking. There should be no line. Because once we do the line, then we are sometimes to us we say whatever we feel like saying. But at the same time, we should be leave engagement and people talk. From there, people who agree at the end of the day that actually I did not take it that way, but now I understand. And then people give each other a handshake. Like I know now I understand. If we as comedians not putting a line, there's a danger. There's a danger because now just we will not do propaganda. We will just elect and we will just be positive. And we will keep it there. And then people have to draw their line. But we are not there. That's why even when people are crying, we should make them laugh. When people are mourning, when people are in court, we should make them laugh. When people are not having service delivery, we should make them laugh. But from there, they draw their line, not us. The moment we as comedians draw a line, then we
Thank you, Bosqueda. Roswitha, do you want to jump in?
I think I was getting feedback, so I thought someone was saying.
It's the same question. Roswitha, can you hear me?
I Gideon, would you mind coming again on your question?
Yes, no problem.
Connection, and I could hardly follow the discussion.
Okay, no, that's fine. My question has to do with if comedy, like you, for example, you talked about working with the youth, right? So half the time you are using comedy for social change and the youth are receiving the comedy. So what I'm asking is, from the perspective of you guys receiving the comedy, is there a line, right? Is there a line that you draw about how comedy can be used for social change? I'm saying that so if a comedian goes up and their ultimate goal is social change, is there a line that we draw and we say, hey, if this is for social change, you can keep going, or there's a line? And I'm talking it mostly for youth, is someone who works with the youth when comedians come out to perform. Is there a line that we draw, or it's all holy and glory for if it's for social change?
I hope I got your question correctly, and that you can also hear. So based on my experience working with comedy and also trying to address social issues affecting young people. I think what I think is that it depends on the situation where in some instances, because I think of the nature of our society, there isn't that clear demarcation or line between the comedy and also issues of social change. Because remember, I also talked about the fact that comedy is used to really talk about these social issues that we want to seek to address. So we've had these comedians, for example, when they're looking at the skit or when they're in performance, they are very much interested in terms of what are the issues that they are bringing out, and they bring them in a humorous way, which is supposed to then capture the feelings and also get attention from the audience, and so that it can then they can then start conversations in terms of what they need to be done to address these issues, and also fuel audience attitudes and perceptions around a certain issue. So for me, I think there is in that clear demarcation in terms of the line between social change and comedy, because we are saying comedy is being used as powerful media tool, which can also be used to set a media agenda, which can also be used to make people think about serious issues. So, like what the other speakers said earlier, I want to then say, if you look at our context, in with the challenges that we're facing, you see that a lot of Zimbabweans, they are always joking about certain things, like, for example, there's no electricity, we're having serious power cuts, or they don't have water at home, or it's very hot, or they are broke, they don't have any money. So you actually see that the comedy is then used and people joke about those instances to also spark discussions, conversations in terms of what there needs to be done to address social issues, and that can also even bring people closer to, people to pay closer attention to these serious and complex issues. So these are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosita. Tando, can I just have you jump in quickly? I would love to hear from you as a comedy producer about this exact same question.
Yeah, sure. I think there is a point where the line has to be drawn. I'll give a very practical example of activity that we did. It was in one of the subs here in Bulawayo and Kulumane, and we had an instance where we were meeting councillors, local councillors and MPs, and we were discussing issues of delivery, the CF Community Development Fund, and the water retention funds. So that was the conversation that we had. So there were a lot of talks told about the water situation in Bulawayo. It was back then when we had serious issues with water, and there were people were actually dying in Louisville because of the water situation. So we had joked around that, and this elderly gentleman stood up and said, we cannot be trivializing issues of service delivery. We cannot be joking around with issues as serious as people losing their lives. So to me, he stood up, said that, and actually left. For him, for his generation, it was kind of different and difficult for him to appreciate that this is stand-up comedy. The councillors are there, the MPs are there, but we are talking and laughing about stuff. But for young people, it was easy for them to understand and articulate really some of the issues and start questioning even after the whole roast. It was a comedy roast, after it was finished. So a line has to be drawn in a way depending on who your audience is and how they understand what they understand. So it's really a task for the content creators to actually really research that if you're going to be presenting your comedy in front of a community that has both mixed young and older generations, if it's in a bar, if it's in a particular space, you need to see that the comedy is appropriate, and that is the drawing the line that I'm talking about. But also I would like to retaliate what Zenzele said, Uti, some of the things we are using comedy because if we try to say them with serious faces, really we'll end up beating each other up. So comedy can work a little better in infusing that humor and trying to ensure that we talk about the hard-hitting issues in kind of a lighter manner. So if the moods are light and there are no emotions being thrown around, it means that we can be at a position of proffering solutions. So comedy should not be as angry because we really want to tackle the real issues. Should not be as angry as poetry if we can draw the line between these two different spoken word disciplines. So with poetry, we can't be that angry. With comedy, you have to say that which people are not willing to say, but in a lighter manner. So I think this is where we are then drawing the line so that we can allow for conversation after we have said what we have said. Yeah, I think quickly thought on drawing the line. Yeah.
Thank you, Tando. It was great. Zenzel, I want to come to you, and I think I want to jump off from what Tando just said about the example that she gave about kind of like that generation gap that exists where we have a whole entire generation that obviously didn't necessarily grow up around the traditional comedy that we have. How are we able to bridge that gap using comedy, or is there any other way? What do we do to bridge that gap?
Well, I think we always have the issues of the generational gap and how people see different genres and of entertainment, whether it's it's comedy, it's music, and some people might find comedy quite informative, not only entertaining but informative and educative, and others who feel like. Comedy is offending them, and you find that there are certain issues that people feel very aggrieved when you do comedy around, like I'll talk about religion. If you do something small or say something in religion, whatever religion, you don't have to question anything, because you question something, you are labeled as blasphemous. So you with the moment someone says no, this is blasphemy, they're saying don't say anything. There is also a lot of controversy around. I find that in Zimbabwe, people are always on the edge when you talk about tribe. I have friends who are Shona, Ndebele, and Mkalanga. We can joke about our tribes when we are just on our own, but post anything about tribe on social media, you will see the reactions that you get. So comedians always also find themselves in trouble in courts when they tackle the issue of tribe, the issue of religion, the issue of sexuality. That's another, I would say, no-go area. The issues of gender. It's another area where people feel that there's. So I really think that. Comedians sometimes find themselves in a corner, in a hard way, or in a difficult position to say, how do you talk about these issues? How do you open up? How do you address these issues in a lighter note without anyone feeling offended, without anyone saying you've crossed the line? And Kedha says there's no line to cross. So this is where you find that it's quite complex, and this is where generational issues are going to come in, because younger people might accept it, but maybe the older generation might think that you've gone too far.
That is great. All right. The thing that I want to jump on to next, it's always kind of like a sensitive thing. I think it feeds right into what we're talking about, the notion of uh, understanding, quote unquote, the boundaries, like what Kedha said, that there is no line, and then what Tando said about saying that there are certain lines that are created based around the environment that one is in. And the other part to this that I want to have a conversation about with regards to social change is the idea that there's always a pushback. There's always the idea that if you are gunning for social change, it means that there is something that you're going against, a system that you're going against, something that you're challenging. So my question has to do with, how do comedians, or how should comedians react in the first, or in the face of just that pushback, that repression, that rejection, that need to, quote unquote, silence a dissenting voice? How do you guys, Bosket, I'm going to start with you. How do you guys deal with that? Because for you to enact social change, I think it's a constant process. It's not you go stand up, you go do stand up one day, you do one skit, and then automatically people's lives are changed. So how do you keep that going in the face of an environment that is not necessarily easy to keep just going with that?
Yeah, that's a hard one. For comedy, it's really never easy, and we at most we are misrepresented when we say stuff. So, like I said, after the laugh, there's always some feedback, and that feedback at times people take it mostly negative in our environment as Zimbabwe. As Zimbabwe, people take it negatively uh, because they feel like you are probably gunning for public office. Like we don't even need public office. We're already in public office for what we say. We have a license to say what we need to say, and when we want to say it, we don't seek anyone's authority or anything. But at the same time, uh, the setbacks are, like I said, misrepresentation. People think we are representing something or an institution or a party or anything. Now the message that we are trying to push across, or the change that we're actually pushing for. In our environment, I think change is a word that people fear, but at the end of the day, it's inevitable. You cannot avoid it. It will happen either way. You take what I'm saying or what I'm not saying, but it will what? It will happen. But when we say it, because probably we are at the forefront of change, we are the modern day prophets. We will say it, but the pushbacks, there's a lot of resistance. There is a lot of resistance, either from, Zimbabwe. People start following you, people start getting to your comment section, people start going into your inboxes and all, and they forget what you're actually trying to just push across. Because at the end of the day, no one wants us to say anything. So, eh, yeah, yeah,
Right.
I don't really. I think Zenzele can help me on that.
Zenzela, come in, and then Tando, you can come in next on that question too, if you want to.
Yeah, it's the problem with our society, like Kedha is saying, is that we have a lot of issues We have a lot of unresolved issues. We have a lot of anger, and we want to take our anger to the weakest person. We know the person who's causing the problem, but you don't want to confront that person, but you then want to take your anger to Kedha, who's trying to lighten your moment. Maybe ngesindebele kuthiwa change kuphuma umnikazi. Maybe I have a new virus. So you find that it's always a bit of a complex issue that people they feel like they're issues that people should not talk about. If we don't want to talk about them, then I don't know what will happen.
Okay. Tando, do you want to come in?
I think it's also a matter of grounding. It's a matter of knowing what the change that we want to bring forth looks like. And I think it's something that we really need to think about very, very deeper. And in thinking about the change we want, I think it also demands some form of ideological grounding. That if you are going to talk about issues of race, of tribes per se, what is that specific change that you want around that particular issue? If you were to address issues of gender equality, what is it that we want to see at the end of it all? And I think that might be the problem that we have as Zimbabweans, and also it affects the way in which we understand comedy. So if you feel like there is change that has to be there, but if you have not defined that change that needs to be there, and if we don't have that collective vision as a people, it will affect how the comedy that we are sending forth, be it skits, be it stand up, how it pans out at the end. So it's affected by the nature of change that we want to see and the grounding that we have as a people in terms of ideology and where we want to go to. So those are some of the things that we really need to think about deeper and widely as we are trying to create change. So we cannot just have change from nowhere. So change has to come from point A to point B or C up to Z, etc. But we have to know as a people that this is the particular direction in which we want to go to. So you'd realize that because we don't have that collective vision as a people, there is a lot of throwing issues around on the comment section, as you were saying, in our social media. We're always throwing issues around. There are people who believe in these people who believe in that, and we don't have that collectiveness on the change that we want to see. I think it really is affected about where we are coming from. As Uzenzele said, we have a lot of unresolved issues. It's coming from where we are coming from as a people, and it's also what we then believe should pan out at the end. Most of the times, well, we have lost hope as young people. We've lost hope in change. We've tried to create this change that we want to see since time memorial, and we've seen a lot of activists come and go, a lot of people using art come and go. I know issues around people who raised a lot of issues through art, the Thomas Mafumos and crew, because we have tried so hard to create change. We really do not then know what that change then looks like. So it's something that we really need to be thinking around. What does the change look like? And how can we then have that collective way of visioning the change that we want, so that we can understand how the content that is being created then comes forth and then starts these conversations towards an amicable solution. I think, yeah, something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. You brought about something that I found to be quite interesting, the notion of having an ideological basis and also specificity with regards to what the act of change is. I think one of the last questions that I want to jump into is the notion, what you say, Tando. What is the following step after the stand-up, the idea of social change? Are we saying that when stand-up comedians go up, they do their work, and I know in theater, I'm who comes from theater, we have something that's called forum theater. We have platforms in which somebody performs, and then there's always that feedback session. But stand-up comedy, there's the act of people receiving the comedy and having the onus on the change or the reflection on them as individuals. So, Roswitha, I want to come to you and ask about the tangible. Maybe tangible is not the right word, but what are the conversations? What are the immediate effects that are you able to notice whenever you bring in comedians to be able to break down issues that you think would definitely be better use comedy? What are the immediate effects? What are the conversations? What is that like?
All right. Thank you very much. So, from our experience of using comedy, we have noted that we have these comedians coming to do performances to be able to entice young people to be able to talk about certain issues, to be able to, capture their feelings, their perceptions or attitudes pertaining to certain things. So what we have also been doing, firstly, is also then to say, how do we leverage on the power of social media so that we can be able to reach out to a wider audience? For example, using YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, among other social media platforms, so that we can have this information, these performances going to as many young people as possible. And then also sparking debates, conversations around the issues that are coming out from those skits. So we always give room, maybe if they have any feedback, maybe if they see it on Facebook, on our Facebook page, for example, they can then even start asking questions, sharing their perceptions, maybe something. For example, there's a skit on encouraging youth participation to take leadership role. They can be able to make comments, suggestions, what they think about that particular issue. So for me, the tangible then comes in the sense that you are using social media so that you can also have young people amplifying their voice around certain issues. Secondly, we have also had instances where we also use comedy to even spark conversations and also facilitate for intergenerational dialogue. I think the other colleagues earlier on spoke around how it's often at times, certain issues performances are taken on board by the elderly and young people. So sometimes we also maybe, for example, play this skit and then have this intergenerational dialogue, hear from the different age groups in terms of what are their thoughts, what are their thinking around the issues that are coming out of that that performance. So you can also then have, and also try to also give platforms for the comedians, even young people, to also try to help the other people understand the reasoning behind the story, to then say, why are we bringing out the issue around maybe the need to ensure that the girl child has the right to education. And maybe lastly, to also just point out, the other tangible has been that sometimes when you also have these performances or these kids, they can even reach out to the intended, maybe, for example, duty bearers. Maybe there's something that is happening. For example, it's a constitutional amendment where you also want to relay a certain message, but because of the restrictive political environment, you are not able to come up with the open and relay the message. So you can also even use comedy to even talk about those hardcore issues, and sometimes you can even get feedback and attention, and maybe you are then called in to come for a discussion to discuss those things. But if you look, maybe to summarize, then to say, using this comedy, I think it's also important that we are also very conscious in terms of the feedback and also following the conversations that will be arising from the comedy, so that we can also be able to see which one is helpful feedback, and also how we can even move a step forward in terms of ensuring that people continue engaging in a discourse around issues affecting them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roswitha. Really, really love that response. I think it gives us something to actually, I love the tangible results that we're seeing in action. So we are almost we are actually right at the end of our conversation. But before we go, I just want to hear from everybody the notion of just your final thoughts on the idea of the bigger picture of how we can be able to use comedy even on a large scale or in national issues. How can we be able to have a consistent effort within comedy, with regards to how we use it, how we're able to keep pushing thoughts. Any of all of you guys, anyone, just jump in, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Zenza, let's just start with you.
All what I can say is I think time in memorial it has proved that comedy is a platform, or it's a tool that can be used by people to tackle very serious issues. But I also want to say comedy alone cannot change issues and cannot bring social change. So comedy should be used for advocating, highlighting tools, but don't expect to have a new government in power tomorrow because people are laughing. There is much more that needs to be done. Kedha cannot announce that the situation has reached another level by just being on stage. So it works with other tools, other platforms, other methods, but it is really a very powerful tool that can be used for social change.
Great. Bosque, do you want to go? You are on mute. You muted.
Yeah, sorry for that. I think I'm getting older. So I think comedy is still just a mirror. It's a mirror of what society thinks and feels. And I feel like we can do it either way. Like I said before, we don't feel like we should put a line to it. We just have to say whatever we feel like we have to say, and then society has to talk about it, sit down, engage, discuss, and then come up with a solution. It's not us who have to come with the solution, but it's just up to us to just bring up the conversation and give it to people. And from there, we just watch and look forward to the next story we have to talk about through humor.
Thank you, Boskeda. Roswitha, and then Tando, you close us off. So I think you're on mute. I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Oh, we lost her. We lost. All right. In the meantime, Tando, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. So I think ultimately one thing that I really love about comedy is that it builds on the character. It builds on the artist's character, and most of the times we have realized that if we talk about the arts sector here in Zimbabwe, we are really talking about artists just coming through to perform at our events, activities, just entertaining. But with comedy, it really builds the character of the comedian, And then the comedian is the one who is then driving change through what they believe in. So that's an interesting part about comedy, and I'm hoping that we as Zimbabwe can be in a position of investing in comedy, because it has not been done the same way that we've invested in other forms of art. So I am glad that in our national budget that was announced a few days ago, there's actually money set aside for the art sector. And besides just the money set aside for the art sector, there is money for creating an enabling environment. So it's really important that that investment goes into comedy as well. So through that and through working together, we really can create the change that we want to see through comedy. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Tando. Thank you. Roswitha?
I'm back. My apologies. My other phone battery went flat. But what I wanted
Okay.
to highlight was just to say, I think what is coming out from this conversation is that comedy is a viable tool for social change, and I'm also in agreement with Zenzele to then say beyond comedy, we also need to be looking at other tools that we can be able to utilize so that we can also realize social change. But I also maybe just wanted to also highlight that maybe it's also important that we also look at the contribution of comedy, the laughing, the humor, how it can also be used to diffuse tension and also even keep our mental health in check, given the current challenges that we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roswitha. I love what everybody has said. One of my favorite statements is, "If we do not laugh, we will die." Um, for me, I remember when I was in college, there was that question: is why is it Zimbabweans always laugh at some of the most traumatic things ever? I'm like, that sometimes has become a natural response, because if you react exactly how you're supposed to react, you spend the rest of the year just reacting in that particular way, and it won't go down for you. So thank you so much. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you so much for coming through, for having a conversation. And one thing I think that is important with social change and comedy is the idea of building critical mass. We are going somewhere, we're getting somewhere. And I'm excited that comedy will keep pushing, and like what Roswitha, what Tando, what Zenzel, what Kedha said, that there are other tools, there are other things that we need to have around comedy to be able to keep pushing for social change. So this has been the Comedy Indaba. It's been great having everybody here, and thank you guys for a wonderful conversation. Remember, this is the Simuka Comedy Festival, and there is a lot of shows going up. Check out the Simuka Comedy Festival Facebook page, Instagram, all social medias. You can find them, and you can get to have a laugh. And also, it's good for us to have a laugh. Thank you guys, and see you next time.
Thank you.